What's up, Bills Mafia? I'm Fernando Schmude. That's your leading the charge. And today, always the pleasure to have Anthony Prohaska with me from Cover One. Anthony, welcome to the show, man. Always a blast to talk some football, to talk some soccer, to talk everything sports related to you. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy any kind of conversation that you and I have. We DM a bunch, and then anytime I'm on the show, I enjoy it. So I appreciate you having me back. As I always say, like, I'm down to come back anytime you want me. And it's tough though now because there's Euros going on, Copa America's going on. We have to stay locked in and talk about the Bills. But like, we already got sidetracked before we went live with the show here because we were talking about Copa America and Brazil. Like, there's a lot of potential for us to get distracted here, so it's going to be tough to stay laser focused.
Yeah, but I think there's no problem about that because in this time of the year when it's so hard to have a lot of different stuff to talk about the Bills, we always have a good talk about the Bills, obviously, but I feel like there's no problem talking about some off-topic stuff. It's also I think it will be a welcome as well. By the way, nice jersey you're wearing, right? Nice Italy one, and are you rooting for Italy in the Euros, man? How's your connection with Italian football? I know you're a big Barcelona fan, but how about Italy?
So my mom's side of the family is Sicilian, so they're all 100% Italian. So
Nice.
from the time I was little, so my mom's side is Italian, my dad's side is Czech. So come hockey stuff, I'm rooting for, well, it used to be Czech Republic, now it's like Czechia and how they've separated a little bit. And I even root for them a little bit in soccer, but soccer, I've always been Italy, everything from the time I was little. And it also helped too, like, growing up, and I got to see guys like Del Piero and Maldini and just those Italy squads that were so good. And I love this jersey. I went to, my wife and I, we got married during COVID. And so we waited, ended up going on our honeymoon in 2021. And we went to Italy and we went all over, but then we were in Rome. And that was right after, because they moved the Euros from 2020 into 2021. So Italy had won the Euros. And I found this really awesome old school soccer shop in Rome with this awesome owner who we spoke to, and he was great. And I got myself an Italy jersey, and he put the Euro 2020 patch on it. And this is one of my prized possessions, and I'm wearing it in hopes that Italy can beat Switzerland tomorrow. But they haven't looked good. They're so poor in the final third. There's no real threat up front to bury it. They've looked very disjointed and disconnected. It's not a very traditional Italian team from a defensive standpoint, but then they're also lacking up front. And so they gotten lucky because their side of the bracket is so easy. Like, the left side of the bracket is France and Germany and Portugal and everyone else. So they really only have to maybe get through England if they advance. But yeah, we'll see. See, I'm so soccer focused. Like, it's such a tough thing.
No problem at all. And yeah, man, with Italy, it seems like a transition, like in this generation, because you have all the players coming from their domestic league, right? They have I have from my dad's part a German family, and I follow Germany soccer closely. Big FC Bayern fan, and obviously the national team. And it feels like Italy is in a similar situation Germany was back in the day before the World Cup in Germany, when they had all these players playing Bundesliga in a transitional phase, starting to find new talents, and they weren't really very good before that, like with the 2002 World Cup where Brazil won and Germany was carried by Oliver Kahn all through the final, even against the US. People from the US that remember that World Cup saw the US playing really well against Germany, almost knocking them out. And then Germany started to find new talent, create new talent, right? And now they have a nice talented squad yet again after the 2010s when they were world champions.
Yeah,
I feel like Italy's in a similar path. It seems like find new guys, new talents, right? And it's always tough.
I mean, even look at after they won the Euros in 2021, and then failed to qualify for the World Cup, which is unbelievable. Like, I was shocked. I forgot who they. No disrespect to anyone else's other country, but they had to all they had to do to advance was beat it was like Bosnia Herzegovina or like somebody really low tier, and they couldn't, and they failed. And I was like, what? Like, you're Italy. Like, I just always Italy, France, Argentina, Germany, Brazil, like England. There's always certain countries that I just audit. Like, I don't care how bad you are. I just expect you to qualify for the World Cup. And when Italy didn't, and then even seeing how they've been here in the Euros, like obviously they advanced, but they got lucky with that literal like goal at the very last kick of the game against Croatia. They looked, and I know they only lost 1-0 to Spain, but they looked brutal versus Spain. Like Spain owned that game. And that's a fun comment. On the opposite side, look what Spain has done with all the young talent that's coming through, like with Yamal for Barcelona and then Nico Williams, who's at Bilbao, like both these
Mm-hmm.
under 20, like they've got all this talent. And yeah, it seems like Italy is in this stage of got to retool, regroup, maybe revamp a little bit like the Bills. And they've definitely fallen in terms of like kind of their national power status.
Yeah, absolutely. So here it is, your soccer podcast, Bills Mafia. You had a 5-minute intro about soccer, and we're probably gonna talk about Copa America a little bit as we move on. But let's start talking Bills before I lose my audience, my Bills audience out here. We are here to talk Bills, and it's always a great talk. So, Bills Mafia, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe to my own Fernando Schmude channel. I always appreciate your support, and feel free to comment via the chat to take part of the show as well. Anthony, it's that time of the year that a little bit slow with news, right, related to the Bills. We are like a little bit less than a month away from training camp, and but one thing for sure when looking at this Bills squad for 2024, I think we can see a lot of openings, right? In the not only in this, maybe not as much in the starting lineup, but in the starting lineup as well. But a lot of position battles all through this depth chart, right? With a lot of new guys coming in, it's a kind of a reset, a retool, or something like that. I don't see it as a rebuild, but there has been some turnover in this roster, right? And some positions up for grabs. And so to talk about those position battles, I'm going to start talking about quarterback. I'm joking, obviously. Man, I need to mention that because how good it is to not talk about a quarterback battle for the starting quarterback spot after. Man, we don't need to care about Kevin Kolb sleeping on something or AJ Manuel if he's getting better or if Losman or Edwards who was the best pick, how good it is to not need to care about that. I think young Bills fans have no idea about what we're talking about now, right?
No, they have no idea. Like just even the nature of having a guy at the quarterback spot, but also just being in the playoffs every year, like winning the division every year, like it's now we're at a spot where the conversation is more like, oh, where did the Bills rank in the AFC? Can they get to the Super Bowl? After years of being like, will they finally make the playoffs this year? Like, yeah, do they have an answer at quarterback? Can Trent Edwards be the guy? Is Ryan Fitzpatrick the guy?
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that. But we know it's funny, like all kind of jokes aside with quarterback, every year I'm always very interested in who the backup is, just because of how Josh Allen plays. There is a potential opportunity for him to get banged up, whether it's in the pocket or out of the pocket with how he plays. So I always am very like tuned in to who's the backup going to be? What do they offer? Is it more of a like for like play? Like Mitch Trubisky is now like, okay, if Allen goes down, he's got some athleticism, can throw a little bit. How do we mitigate that versus having more of a guy who's the backup, who's just there from the shoulders up and a good guy in the room? And it's like kind of like what Derek Anderson was to him, like early on, and helping him really kind of learn the game and set things up. And so I'm always interested to see who the backup is and how they do. But yeah, it's really nice. Just I don't want to jinx anything because I feel like now Allen's going to get hurt like tomorrow. He's going to slip in the shower like Kevin Cobb, and then he's going to be done. But it's nice to not have to worry about that.
Yeah, 100%. And about the backup, Mitch Trubisky is back, and I'm not a big Mitch Trubisky fan. I think a lot of people are higher on him than I am, but it's a guy that the Bills feels comfortable with him, right? A guy that wasn't there with Brady as the offensive coordinator, but he was there. Josh knows him, and McDermott knows him. Bean knows him, and he's a guy that's comfortable in that spot, right? And a guy that it seems the Bills trust to come in if needed for a few snaps, for a quarter, for a game maybe, and try to keep the team competitive.
Yeah, I think a dude that I mean, if Josh Allen goes down, it kind of really doesn't matter who the backup is. Like the Bills are maybe
Yeah.
kind of screwed, but yeah, at least with Trubisky, like you get some athleticism. And he did well here. I mean, didn't really get a ton of reps or opportunity to like do his thing, but I mean, it was good enough to give him a nice little contract with the Steelers. But then he ended up playing like not great, and Mason Rudolph looked better than him and kind of led the Steelers to the playoffs a little bit. If I had the choice of like a backup, I prefer somebody more like I liked when Case Keenum was here. Give me a dude who's smart, like not that Trubisky isn't, but give me somebody who is going to be good in those meeting rooms, who's good with the iPad on the sideline with Josh and talking about like, what'd you see out there? What coverage did you see? This and that, kind of breaking things down with him. I don't know if Trubisky does do that or doesn't do that. I just think he's more kind of just, all right, there's a backup, as opposed to a guy that I think can be more of an actual resource, like a true veteran can be, even though Trubisky's in that category now. But just based on what he's done, yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Like I don't see him and I'm like, oh, great, what an awesome backup. I'm like, okay, there's your backup quarterback. It is what it is.
Yeah, and this thinking about this, one guy that would be awesome doing this stuff that you just mentioned, but unfortunately he's a death sentence to every starting quarterback ahead of him when he was a backup is Fitz, right? Fitz would be awesome as a smart guy, mentor, but I don't know. That guy simply always find a way to play, right?
Yeah, he always finds a way into the lineup. I was also thinking another one too, who's also kind of in this scenario, like Jacoby Brissett. I
Yeah,
really like Jacoby Brissett, but it seems like Jacoby Brissett always somehow is in the
true,
starting lineup for every team.
true.
So like, yeah, he's the kiss of death. But yeah, it's that type of like, dude, give me that veteran, but who hopefully isn't like a jinx and a curse to the
Yeah,
starter.
yeah, man, and a guy that would be my dream scenario to be the Bills' backup quarterback would be Tyrod Taylor, and I hate that he's with the Jets now because love the guy. Obviously, I know a lot of people in Bills Mafia don't like him for some reason. I don't get it. Okay, it's fine that okay, all of us believe at some point that he could be better than he was, but we can't take away what he was, and he was pretty good for us when in a time that we needed, right, some stability there, and also always a class act, a leader of men, a guy that carried himself the right way. Total respect for Tyrod, and even feel bad about how he missed his true opportunities after leaving the Bills with some injuries, even people trying to kill him. It seems in LA, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Some weird stuff happening to him. Always getting injured in the worst time possible with the Giants last season. It seems he can't stay healthy anymore. But I like him a lot, and I think he can. He would be a nice backup as well. A guy that I don't know how good he is in the film room, but he always was a smart, a great leader kind of guy, right? So I'd love to have him, but he's pretty expensive as well, right? The Jets are paying a lot for him.
Yeah, he's that type of backup QB where it's going to cost like a pretty penny to kind of bring him in for at least a backup. But no, I'm in lockstep with you. Like I would love to have Tyrod as a backup. I'll always have a soft spot for him in my heart, be it even if he wasn't necessarily the driving force that got the Bills to the playoffs. Like he was still a significant part of
Yeah,
that team that broke the drought. And I like the style of play. I know everybody always wanted him to chuck the ball downfield more and not, check it down underneath as much, but he had the ability to make some plays with his arm, make some plays with his legs. And yeah, to your point, like he just seemed like a good dude, like a class act. Like you said, I would welcome him back in open arms, especially if he wanted to play like for a cheap kind of deal. But go ahead,
yeah.
chase that money. And also I think it's a testament to him, like that he's had like a pretty good career from a longevity standpoint. He continues to get paid as a backup with a variety of teams. And, there's something to be had there with his game. And I think him continuing to get contracts shows that, and he just keeps chasing whoever's going to pay him the most, and all power to him for that.
True, true. Yeah, I see him like, man, if you need a guy to step in for a game or two, take care of the ball, keep some drives alive with his legs, like he fits the bill, right? And
Yep.
and even against us last year, like that Giants team had no business in
He made a
beating us.
couple
And
crazy throws in that
yeah,
game, like some
yeah,
pinpoint dots that I was like, of course he's going to do that to the Bills in this game. Yeah, and the Bills almost lost it. That was the
yeah,
last play of the game was, Taryn breaking that up on Waller, and it could have been a call, could have not
true.
been a call. The Bills didn't look good in that game. Yeah, Tyrod almost came back to Buffalo and, put another kind of nail in the Bills' coffin that year.
True, true. Yeah, man. But let's move on from quarterback. We thank God we have Josh, and Josh is unbreakable. He will never get injured and miss a snap in his NFL career. So let's talk about running back position because okay, we're pretty set there at running back one spot. I really expect a lot from James Cook this season. He he took a step forward last season, becoming a Pro Bowl type, but I feel like there is still room for growth with him developing with more being more reliable with his hands. He's been good, but he's had some bad drops that
Mm-hmm.
cost some touchdowns, and especially in pass protection. So he can stay on 2 minute drills, clear passing downs. He can stay on the field, and you
Yep.
don't need to sub in like Murray, for example, to protect the quarterback, right? So there is room for growth. He can be that guy. He has the potential to be an all pro even with his shown so far. But if he continues to be the same guy, and sometimes the guy is just what he is, right? He can't become a great pass blocker. He can't shake off that inconsistent hands or lapses in concentration. So the Bills will need a running back too to be ready to contribute a lot, right? And I feel like they spent some draft capital with Ray Davis, but Ty Johnson also did a pretty decent job last season in his opportunities, and he's a veteran, right? Some people always fall in love with the new rookies coming in, but they forget that the veterans are years ahead in terms of knowing the playbook, knowing what the coaches want from them, living the NFL life, right? Being ready for an 18, 17 game season.
Mm-hmm.
And rookies got to come in, adapt. So how do you see this battle for running back two spot with Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and even other guys as underdogs there?
I like that you mentioned Ty Johnson because I don't think he gets enough shine. Really, both him and Latavius Murray, like what they were last year for the Bills, extremely effective. And Ty Johnson was so funny because Joe Brady takes over and everybody's like, oh, who's going to get more usage in the Bills offense? Like, what's he going to change? What's he going to do? And I remember like a lot of the conversation was, oh, maybe he can get Deontay Hardy involved more, another receiver. And instead it was like, nope, I'm going to activate Ty Johnson and Ty Johnson's going to be the guy. Like no one saw that coming in any way, shape, and form. And yeah, he factored well. They were even using him and Cook on the field at the same time in like two legit running back sets, like going pony personnel. Ty Johnson could block. He has a little speed. He can catch a little bit. He has some physicality. Like I do like the Bills bringing him back. He was a cheap, affordable ad. And I do think it's a legit battle for that RB2 spot in terms of who gets more touches, either him or Ray Davis. And either way it shakes out, I really like both. I think Ray Davis is such a good overall running back at everything, kind of in the mold. I don't want to say not from a play style standpoint necessarily, but he reminds me a bit of Devin Singletary, which in the sense of this guy who is not like elite at anything, like on a scale of 1 to 10, there's not really anything where he's like a 9 or a 10. But at pretty much everything, he's like a 6.5 or a 7. And that's a really good baseline. That's a good thing to have. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He doesn't get enough credit for how good of a pass catcher he is on design, schemed up routes, but also in terms of, the play happens and he has protection. He's scanning over here and nobody comes. His sense of when to release out into the field, how to find space. He's very adept at that. He's also really good in the screen game, and the Bills have been so poor for years at the screen game, although some of that is tied to Allen. It's a larger conversation. But yeah, I like what Davis adds as a receiver, as a runner with his physicality. He's got really good feet. He has some of that Devin Singletary ability too, to kind of make you miss in a phone booth, that really quick, good, agile moves in the hole and in short, confined space. He's not a bad pass protector. He's good mentally. He's good reading and scanning. He just has to clean up some of his technique. What's nice with Ray Davis is because he's a little bigger and thicker than Cook, I think he can have a better long-term, future as a pass protector because he just has to clean up some of his form and his positioning. Cook, on the other hand, he's good. Like he's a willing pass protector. He scans well. He IDs well, but he's not the biggest dude. He's got more of a slender frame. So he's more of the nail than he is the hammer. And he's had some good pass pro reps last year. I think he got better as the year went on, but he's one of those dudes where if he's going to be a good pass protector, he almost always has to go low. Like he's got to cut a linebacker at the knees or the legs, try and flip them, take their legs out. He's not built to kind of sit and stand and use his head in his hands and get into you and stop you and anchor. Ray Davis can do that a little more. Ty Johnson can do that a little more, but I don't think Cook's ever going to be that guy. And it's a good running back group. Like I think Cook, to your point, he could ascend another level. And if he does, man, like that would mean a lot for this offense, because I think Dalton Kincaid is going to be the most important point person for this offense, especially from a pass standpoint. I think the offense will flow through him. I think Cook is second because Cook's going to he's going to get catches. He's going to get touches in the run game. He's going to be a very important dude in this offense. So if he can take another jump, that would be huge for the Bills. And then regardless of what he does, knowing that you've got quality depth behind him in Ty Johnson and what we think we have in Ray Davis, it's a good running back room, and I like really all three running backs for what they offer, and I think it's a good group.
Yeah, man, it's funny because I wrote about it, about the guys that could have the biggest impact in this offense next season, and I had exactly like this, like Kincaid #1, because it's a passing league after all, but James Cook being able to contribute catching passes, but also with the Bills and Brady especially, so willing to try to pound the rock and run the ball. He has all the opportunities in the world to be a difference maker for this offense and take some of the to make Josh Allen's life easier, right? So I have it like this, and it's also nice that you mentioned Mother. Love him, and really love Mother a lot, and those kind of guys we've seen that everywhere. We've seen that with Fred Jackson keeping Marshawn Lynch out of the field. We saw it with Motor having his opportunities, and then with the Texans, he was a guy that found a way to play a lot and produce a lot. And now he's going to the Giants. And man, I saw a crazy stat that Motor had in recently, like a production very similar to Saquon Barkley, who is left and is a superstar running back, and nobody gives him enough credit for what he's been able to produce. So this kind of running back always find his way onto the field, right? And Ray Davis, if he can be this kind of player, he will help this Bills offense a lot. And one more positive about Ray Davis is he's used to move on from one team to another and to need to adapt to a new scheme or new teammates, new situation, even new place, right? Living in new place, and he's used to that in his college career, so it might make his transition to Buffalo smoother, right?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like him almost kind of being like a free agent year after year in college football, and knowing how to get adapted to new environments, new playbooks, new teams, and just his journey in general, like everything that he's had to go through. I think he's a guy who is able to fit into a lot of different areas and in a lot of different ways. And I like that pick. I think it's always tough with running backs now because it feels like you can get a good running back anywhere. But, getting him in the 4th round, I think he gives a good solid baseline. He's a good, partner, I think, to Cook, and in the rotation with Ty Johnson as well. And it's just nice to have options there that are seemingly like known quantities, right? And I think that's why Devin Singletary keeps getting contracts. I think that's why Ray Davis got drafted, why he might see another contract, not necessarily with the Bills, but, not everybody is this high ceiling elite player. Sometimes you just want guys that are good at a bunch of stuff and do a pretty good job with everything. That's what Devin Singletary is. He's not the sexiest, but he's pretty good at almost everything. And I think Ray Davis is in that mold, just with, a couple different tweaks than Singletary from a frame standpoint and skill set standpoint.
Yeah, Eric agrees with us with the depth chart, the running back room being good. And there is even an extra tool in this room we saw last season Brady trying to use Stephon Diggs on the backfield sometimes to find ways to get him the ball in space. He even run the ball against the Chiefs in the last game last season. And now we have Curtis Samuel, who's been doing that kind of stuff in his career, and he's been pretty good doing so, right? He's been a decent runner for a wide receiver lining up in the backfield, and he can catch the passes out of the backfield even in a better way than running backs do so, right?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think he's a sneaky one for kind of like just the weapons group on the offense as a whole, like not just looking at, wide receivers or running backs or tight ends, but Curtis Samuel, I think, gives this offense just a schematic mismatch in a variety of ways. You can put him in the slot, you can put him outside, you can use him on reverses or, jet sweeps, or literally line him up in the backfield and have him run a route out of the backfield, or just give him a handoff. And he can function like a running back. You can run real running back stuff with him. You can run zone runs. You can run gap runs with him. Like, he's played running back before. He's comfortable back there. We know he's gotten some reps there already in this offseason. I like his addition being in that grouping just because it adds another layer. Like, just, if you're in the third quarter and it's third down and you go with 11 personnel or whatever, and you split out James Cook and Curtis Samuels in the backfield, it's just a little like, okay, what's going on here? Maybe there are no running backs on the backfield, and you come out and it's 5 wides, but then you're like, okay, cool, they're going to go spread, but it's like, nope, Curtis Samuel's in the backfield, and it might be a screen. They might send him on a route, or they might just actually give him the football and see, it's 3rd and 5, and you're thinking, well, they're going to pass the ball because they've got, 4 wide receivers and Dalton Kincaid out there, but it's like, nope, we're going to put Samuel in the backfield and we're actually going to give him the ball because he might be able to run for 6. He's a nice little, I think, trump card and chess piece, I should say, that can be used in a variety of ways. And he's going to get some looks there at running back. We'll see how much of it is pass related, how much of it is run related. It's a nice, again, another piece for Joe Brady to just push and pull and hit these buttons and levers to try and maximize everything on the offense.
Yeah, man, that flexibility that he gives us to do what you said, line up different ways and really make the difference. Keep thinking all the time what's coming, right? And it's interesting. Yesterday I had some free time during my lunch break, and a game just popped out in my YouTube channel, and I checked out the Bills versus Raiders in the AFC Championship for the first Super Bowl. First Super Bowl.
Yeah, the game that was like 51-3. They absolutely
and man,
Raiders.
They started with all gas, no brakes, and that offense was so lining up and running plays so fast, and you had Thurman, right, being this kind of guy, obviously at a totally different level, but when he lined up, the Bills went empty several times, and Thurman was able to catch some slants, to catch some quick passes, and make people pay, right? And James Cook might be able to become this kind of guy if he takes the next step, but Curtis Samuel can offer a little bit of that as well, right? So it's really interesting to have this kind of piece in this offense. And speaking of Samuel, let's move on to the wide receiver depth chart, because this one is probably the toughest one. I remember my old Maddens, maybe Madden 05, Madden 04, when you had in franchise mode those positional battles, right?
Yeah.
Preseason, and they keep switching the guys according how you were playing preseason. It seems like 2005 EA Sports had a better technology than nowadays, it seems. But man, looking at this wide receiver depth chart, man, Madden would be in trouble. They would be shaking off the players and switching them every week, because it's tough to really look at it and have a definition. Who's your number 1? Who's your number 2, right? And I kind of have Coleman as the X, right? Because the Bills are really trying to establish him there and to have him prepared for playing that position. But today, I think I would put Khalil Shakir as my number 1 wide receiver in this Bills depth chart. And then you have Curtis Samuel coming from another team, obviously, but with a past with Joe Brady, and it wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world if Curtis Samuel ends up being the number 1 or number 2 guy in the depth chart. So, and then guys running from trying to become this second or third piece from Valdez Scantling, a deep threat. Claypool trying to rebuild his NFL career. A lot of options. How do you see this positional battle shaking off in the wide receiver room?
It's so interesting and it's so fun because there's new body types and frames in this wide receiver room. Like, the Bills really haven't been like they really haven't been a bigger physical contested catch type of wide receiver room. It's always been like the Smurf nickname, like John Brown and Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs and like smaller base guys. Now they've got Keon Coleman and MVS and Matt Collins and guys that are just bigger bodied and physical. And I think what's interesting with this grouping is defining it as who like wide receiver one is, I think is really a really interesting conversation. Like, because I think if you're defining it based on targets and catches, I think it's probably Curtis Samuel or Khalil Shakir. If you're basing it on snaps, it gets super muddy. It could be Keon Coleman, it could be Matt Collins, it could be like MVS, like all these different potential groupings because of the snap share. Because I really do think the Bills offense this year, and I've done so many episodes on it this offseason. I've had different guests. One of them was Mina Kimes from ESPN. Like, I've really dove into a lot of the schematics for the Bills offense in terms of what I think they can be in 2024. And one of the aspects I really keep coming back to is I think they're going to have more condensed formations. So lower formational width, a la the Lions and the Texans and the Rams, the Dolphins, the Niners, everything kind of more compact. They'll still go spread. They're still going to have those spread elements. But with what they have in the wide receiver room, all those different combinations of size, frame, athleticism, pass catching ability, but also run blocking ability in the wide receiver room and the tight end room gives them the opportunity that if they go with condensed formations, you can really put a defense into a bind in terms of making them have to honor both the run and the pass just based off your personnel groupings and your alignments. Oh, sorry. And so going with those condensed formations, you get the opportunity. You can still pass. You can go under center play action and generate some explosives. But you can also run the ball in a variety of ways. And then you can stay in those same personnel groupings. You could be in 11 personnel and have Kincaid, your running back, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins. And you can run the ball right down a team's throat because of Samuel, Hollins, and Coleman. And then on the next play, you can stay in that personnel grouping and you can go empty and you can split James Cook out and you can pass however you want. Like, and if you're in 12 with Kincaid and Knox, you can do that same thing. You can run the ball in a variety of ways. You can pass the ball in a variety of ways. So the wide receiver conversation is so interesting because I think if you're looking at it from like a targets or receptions perspective, I think that's one conversation. And then the other one is just a snap share conversation. And that's where it gets really interesting because if they do lean into the run game, condensed formations, and using those bigger bodied physical pass catchers, not only in the pass, but also as kind of chess pieces in the run, then it bodes better for those bigger dudes like Matt Collins, Keon Coleman, and MVS, guys who, again, can function as pass catchers, but also as really good run blockers.
Yeah, man, I remember how the Bills used to, especially in his first seasons, Gabe Davis, he was used like the fourth wide receiver, and he was moved inside, and sometimes he was blocking like a tight end, like in some plays, and now the Bills have even more pieces to be able to do so, and you never know which one will be moving pre-snap and aligning and giving that help in the blocking department, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, there are a lot of questions about the Bills wide receiver group, especially because of obviously the loss of Stephon Diggs as the established number one guy. But man, I'm so excited to see this group from training camp on, like establishing themselves to see which guys will step up and hold down that starting spots, because we have a possibility of rotating a lot, but it's also fair to think that maybe the hot guys stay on the field more, right? It makes all sense in the world, and you have some big guys that can offer the same kind of value doing different things, catching, blocking, and fighting for contested catches. So,
and I think that's also a point too. Like, I think you really could see it change from week to week. Like what you have on this Bills offense from like a weapon standpoint, pass catching standpoint. Now that Stephon Diggs is gone, you don't have just somebody who okay, cool, this guy can win one-on-one. Let's just get this guy the ball. Like, you don't have that. I use the basketball term. Like, you don't have that guy who can just go and get you a bucket at any point. But what you do have is a bunch of, again, combinations of athleticism and size, pass catching and run blocking, that give you the opportunity to create mismatches. And so part of that is why I think you could see things change week to week. Maybe, week one, the Bills come out and Khalil Shakir has like 8 catches for 90 yards. And then maybe the next 2 weeks combined, he only has like 3 catches, because the next 2 weeks, the Bills think, you know what? The better matchup is to go with heavier personnel or bigger receivers, and we're just going to run the ball down this team's throat. And so maybe Allen only has like 17 attempts each of the next 3 games. And maybe Keon Coleman has a bigger snap share, or Coleman has more catches because they're going with bigger bodied guys on the field. It's all kind of, again, I think pushing different buttons, pulling different levers. Joe Brady needs to maximize what he has. And the way to do that is formationally, and from an alignment perspective and from a personnel perspective. I still think if we're looking at it large scale, I think Kincaid, similar to the comment there in the chat, like I agree. Like I think Kincaid's going to lead the Bills in targets. I think he'll lead the Bills in catches, probably, maybe even yards and touchdowns. I think he's the tip of the spear, the focal point when it comes to the pass game. But when you look at the receivers, it becomes a really interesting aspect because I think it'll change week to week based on the opponent and then based on whatever schematic advantage Joe Brady is trying to create. Because again, you can, like, there's different elements in the wide receiver room and in the tight end room. But when you combine the wide receivers and the tight ends, you really just have a bunch of big athletic dudes. No one's overly fast, except really kind of for Curtis Samuel. Nobody's this huge monster in certain areas. Like, it's just a lot of big, you have a whole bunch of power forwards, and you can lean into that. How does an offense, or how does a defense deal with that? Can they match it with defensive backs? Do you have a nickel corner that can fit the run against Kincaid or Knox or Coleman or MVS or Hollins or even Curtis Samuel? And Khalil Shakir came on as a blocker last year as well. So I think leaning into that aspect is the way the Bills offense will succeed. But then also because of that, it means each week you're going to have different guys who are going to show up. Like Keon Coleman might be on the field a bunch the first 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe he only has like 4 targets total because they're just using him as a blocker and using him in all these ways that's valuable. But on the stat sheet, it's not going to show up. And that's a
kind of like Gabe, right?
Exactly. Like you nailed it. Like that kind of quasi role. And then that's fun because we know even if the Bills are like 4-0, people are going to be like, yeah, but Keon Coleman only has 5 catches. He sucks. What a horrible pick. And it's like, no, they're using him a certain way. Like, it's just fun to see, kind of predict what's going to happen and then the fallout as it happens.
Yeah, man, 100%. And people were a little bit worried about, the Bills are changing to big wide receivers, and Josh only had success with the Smurfs and what's going on. But when the Bills went that direction, I tried to watch some tape of the big guys that Josh had. Like, he had Kelvin Benjamin a little bit, but later, I remember in the playoff game against the Houston Texans that season, how we had Duke Williams in the squad, and he was in practice squad, and they were elevating him for some games against Tennessee Titans. He scored on a run-the-pass option, and then later against the Texans, he was the most targeted wide receiver in that game. It shows how the Bills felt the need for that kind of weapon, but unfortunately, Duke wasn't the level of the high-level weapon in that kind of role, right? And he had like 12 targets and maybe 4 catches in that game, and we all know that pass that Josh threw just before halftime, a contested catch situation down the right sideline and in the end zone, that Duke was caught it for some milliseconds right before dropping it, and
so
man, now the Bills have several big tickets for this kind of role, right? Several guys that can become a difference maker. Not a difference maker. Maybe Coleman is the only one with a big time potential for that. Maybe Claypool, if he can recover. But Hollins, Valdez-Scantling, they offer something better or more reliable than Duke Williams with their size in this kind of role, right?
Yeah, and you just have to change things schematically. Like, I think, Terrell Bernard, your boy, somebody you love, like people talked about so much last year, like, oh, Bernard is better than Edmonds. Look at what he's doing, yada, yada. And I'm not going to speak to it either way, but Terrell Bernard is a different player than Tremaine Edmonds. So Sean McDermott used Terrell Bernard differently. There was a reason he was blitzing Terrell Bernard, because Terrell Bernard's a tremendous blitzer. Tremaine Edmonds is not. Like, they didn't play the same. They played the same position. They didn't play it the same way. They changed the way that role is. And I think that's what the Bills will do with this wide receiver grouping, because they don't have these separators, like you said. And it's not that Josh can't win with bigger body dudes. We just haven't seen him have the abundance of success with these guys. His success has come with Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs, these guys who can win in the release, win in the stem, they can win on the break, they get open early, they get open often. And now it's very much a change in what they have in the grouping. And I just think that means you have to play differently. Like if so we were talking about soccer earlier, it makes me just think now, like if you were playing like Pep's, Barcelona, because you had a bunch of small, quick passing dudes, but now all of a sudden you've got like an abundance of center forwards. You're going to go with a different lineup, and now you're probably crossing the ball more. You're going more route one stuff because you're trying to generate headers and play physical in the box. Because why? You've got bigger body dudes, so you're not going to try and play, the ticky tack type stuff and get cute. You got bigger, more athletic dudes. Let's chuck the ball into the box and try and get some headers, create some fouls, and create some space. And that just seems like the next step. Like, and especially too, seeing how, looking at how a lot of the successful offenses work in the NFL. And again, I'm using some of the ones with those condensed formations, the Lions, the Dolphins, the Texans, the Rams, the Niners. All of those teams have mismatch creators in their personnel groupings. The Niners love to use Kyle Juszczyk. They run like over 40% of their snaps have two running backs on the field because McCaffrey and Juszczyk can be used in a variety of ways. But Juszczyk can be this legitimate run blocking fullback, or he can work out in the pass and function in the route distribution. Miami has that with Alec Ingold. Then you look at the Rams. And I feel like people don't recognize the mismatch creation for the Rams. The Rams last year, over 95% of their snaps were in 11 personnel. But they're one of the best running teams in football because Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson before he got traded, and even Tutu Atwell, who's a small guy, they all block their asses off. And Puka and Cooper Kupp specifically, they block like tight ends. Yeah. So you can be in 11 personnel and pass and do anything you want, or you can run the ball down a team's throat because you've got receivers who can crush nickel corners, who can dig out safeties, but who also can wash down defensive ends. They can take out linebackers. The Lions are a similar category as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best receivers in the league, right? He's also a very underrated blocker. He's out there crushing nickel corners. And even in the NFC Championship game, you look at the Lions, they had a 64% 11 personnel usage rate last year. After Amon-Ra St. Brown, the receivers that had the second and third most snaps, Josh Reynolds, Donovan Peoples-Jones, bigger bodied, thick receivers that allow them to run the ball when they go in 11. And if you watch the NFC Championship game, especially in that first half, they're going condensed formations and they're running crack toss to Jahmyr Gibbs. And Josh Reynolds is just annihilating and erasing Bosa, just washing him out completely. And so I think the Bills changing things a little bit, I think it's very much within the schematic trends that you're seeing in a lot of the better offenses, which, and again, it's not the same blueprint for everyone. Like how the Niners play is different than how the Rams play, which is different than how the Lions play, which is different than how the Dolphins play, and all these teams that like to do mismatch stuff. But the whole idea is having body types and skill sets that force a defense to have to answer questions they don't want to answer. They have to be like, can we stay in nickel? Do we have to bring in another linebacker? Do we have to bring in another safety? If we bring in a heavier guy, can they cover like that? Or, okay, can the smaller guys fit the run, but because they can cover, like, oh no, what do we do? That's the nature, I think, of a lot of what NFL football is. And I think the Bills are moving in that direction by having big guys who are also athletic, who can function in the run and the pass. It just makes the defense have to account for everything on almost every play.
Yeah, definitely very exciting, man. Bills Mafia, hit that like button, subscribe to my Fernando Schmude's channel. Really count on your support. Really appreciate it. And the tight ends room pretty established, right? I feel like nobody questions how Kincaid is the top dog now there. I still count on Dawson Knox a lot. I think he will contribute a lot still and be a valuable piece for this team as well. And they like Morris, and Morris was pretty okay. I felt like he played okay when he got his opportunities, even being a mismatch against some linebackers in the passing game. So this tight end room is pretty established. But the offensive line, I feel like the starting lineup is also pretty established. I feel like a lot of people love Vampron Granger, and I can see why. And I really like the guy as well. But again, I feel like he's a rookie. He will take his time. He'll learn to play guard as well, and maybe be brought in slowly. Unless one of the veterans really is struggling really badly, right? But if all goes well, I feel like Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance and Brown is your starting lineup, and I don't feel like there is a real battle there. Only if one of those guys open a door for it happening. How do you feel about this offensive line and those battles for starting spots or only for depth spots there?
I'm in a similar spot. Actually, real quick, I wanted to acknowledge the comments in the chat from I don't know how to pronounce the name, but starting with like not the Porai. Close. I thought that was spot on, like saying that the Bills wide receiver group is the new version of the Oakland Athletics, like the baseball team, and he means from back when like the whole Moneyball movie and trying to get like cobble everything together and playing analytics and schematics and all this stuff. I just thought that was spot on, saying that the Bills group is a new version of that. And then, you know, it was funny too, because they were led by Billy Bean and the Bills are led by Brandon Bean. So that's why he said in the comments, a new Bean is changing the game. So I like that. I just thought that was really smart. I thought that was really smart. Awesome. I thought it was a good comp, clever, well said. I like that a lot.
Let me help you. Nathan is his name.
Nathan?
Por aí is like around there. All right.
Okay.
I should around there. Yeah.
I saw the AI and I saw it's pronounced like how Spanish, like IE, but it would be A-Y-I. I didn't see. I saw just the I and I should have known. Yeah. But I mean, the Spanish and Portuguese, I feel like should be similar, but they are, but they are also not. Like, you know what's funny too? Like, we're going to get off track, but like Spanish, especially because they're on the same like continent. Like, I just thought like with Brazil and Argentina being there, like Spanish speaking country, Portuguese speaking country, I would think those languages would be closer, but then like Spanish is closer to Italian than it is to Portuguese. It just like language stuff like is
it's weird.
It's so weird. Like I don't understand how it makes like sense, or even that like the fact of like learning like, oh, because they speak Brazilian. It's like, no, they speak Portuguese. And I'm like, but they're Brazil. I just remember being little and being so confused. I was like, what don't they speak? And then it's like, well, Argentinians speak Spanish. I'm like, but they're in Argentina.
Everybody
like,
speaks Spanish here and only Brazil Portuguese. It's crazy.
It's so it makes no sense. But yeah, that's very funny. I like that.
Let me help you with another one from Nathan here. This one is interesting, all right? BBMP means like Bora Bahia. Bahia is a team here, right? With a big fan base from the north.
Okay.
And they are second place after a long time not being competitive. They're in the second place in the soccer first division now.
Okay.
All right. Second place. No, second place is our Botafogo, right?
Botafogo,
yeah. Yeah, Botafogo is the second place right now. Okay. But Bahia is like Nathan, around there. All right. And those initials are like Bora Bahia Minha Explete, right? It's like, let's go Bahia, my expected. Right?
I like that.
That's something like this for Nathan. Shout out to Nathan.
I'm learning a lot in this
Taking
one.
his time to participate here.
Well done. He came in the comment. He said first, tied.
Oh, and now I can recognize. He's Marcel, not Nathan. He's correcting us again. His children keeps changing his profile.
I like that.
Marcel has been around here already as... when I told you about the Os Sapequinhas, the little saucy kids, all right? His children. But shout out to Marcel, always with us. So about the offensive line.
Oh yeah, sorry, we got sidetracked. Yeah, no, I'm spot on with you. I think it'll be Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance, Brown. The only way I see anything changing is obviously first injury, which can happen because it's the offensive line. But maybe I do think there's a chance if Van Pran Granger is playing so good, maybe they want to move McGovern back, or it could be any one of those combinations, right? Like maybe McGovern doesn't look as good at center as they thought he would. Maybe Edwards doesn't look as good at left guard as they wanted him to. Or maybe VPG, that's what I'm saying for Van Pran Granger, because his name is like a tongue twister and I say it wrong all the time. Maybe VPG is just playing so good. And it has to be relative to one of those. Like if VPG is playing at center better than Edwards is playing at guard, and they know how good McGovern can be at guard, maybe they move McGovern back. Or along within that, if VPG is playing good at center and McGovern's just been kind of meh at center, maybe they want to move him back to guard because they think he can play guard better than Edwards. Like some kind of combination. I really wish the offensive line didn't change. It was one of my favorite aspects of last year. Like, we haven't had a consistent offensive line from a pass protection standpoint and a run blocking standpoint, really, like in the entirety of Allen's career so far. And last year they finally had it, like consistency in pass protection, diversity in the run game. You could run zone, you could run gap. Like, they really did a lot of good stuff. So I'm disappointed to see some changes, even though it's really only one new face and it's 2 positional changes, which isn't crazy, but I do think that's going to be the starting lineup you see. And I have faith in Aaron Cromer. And what's nice is David Edwards has played with Cromer for years, going back to their time with the Rams. So, Edwards is kind of like that Cromer guy. He understands the technique, the teachings, the fundamentals, the idea, and the methodology behind all of it. And then the rest of the grouping has already been in this system together as well. So I do think the offensive line has the opportunity to be a strength for this team. I think they were a strength last year. I don't think they were talked about enough. Like, part of the reason why the Bills' run game was so good is because the Bills were, I believe, top of the league in yards that, like, the top of the league in terms of lowest percentage of runs that got hit at the line of scrimmage, lowest percent of runs that went for 0 or less yards. They were close to the top of the league in yards before contact, meaning like they were just creating displacement and the running backs were able to go 2 or 3 yards before even getting touched. They had a really good thing going, so I'm hoping they can recreate that. But as of right now, yeah, it doesn't look like, and really, even like you said, I think the only like wild card in there is VPG. Like, I don't think anything else changes.
Leo Collins coming back.
Maybe. I never want to go like absolutes and say 100% yes or 100% no. I just think it's a small percentage chance. But yeah, who knows? Maybe Collins does something. But I really do think the line is kind of set based on what they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, we would need like 3 or 4 hours to have our entire conversation. So I want to end talking about the defensive side of the ball, not going so methodically and looking at the main competitions there. We have plenty, all right, because defensive line is still a question mark in the edge positions. Von Miller has been able to show some of his practice videos, and I'm starting to get pumped up for his comeback. I'm trying, no, stupid. Don't believe those silly videos. But man, the guy looks strong, and and it's really hard to be worse than he was last season.
Yes.
And then we have safety position and maybe a 3-man battle, 3-horse battle between Bishop, Edwards, and Rep. Even backup linebacker spots up for grabs with a lot of competition there and a lot of guys injured. Crazy about all those injuries in the mini camps, right? So how do you see those competitions shaking up on the defensive side of the ball? Which ones are you looking forward the most, looking at the defensive side?
I'm starting with defensive end just because I have questions there about like who's going to give the top tier or top level production. I think Greg Rousseau is your top guy on the depth chart. He's your edge one, and he's tremendous against the run. One of the best run defenders of anybody on the defensive line in football. Agreed. But from an edge position, he's arguably like the best run defending edge in football. And he's been that way since he was a rookie. But in terms of a pass rusher, he's still putting things together. I think he's more of like a number 2 when it comes to pass rushing, which isn't too bad because he's had some injuries. If he stays healthy, I think he could take a jump and be more of a complete player and be good to go. But what's worrisome about him being more of a number 2 from a pass rusher is because they don't have a number 1 anywhere else in that edge grouping. They were lucky enough that Leonard Floyd came in last year and played as good as he did and was really kind of that pass rushing 1 option, or paired very well with Rousseau, or at the very least was kind of like a high tier 2. I worry about who plays off of Rousseau. Is AJ Epinesa going to take a jump? Can he be a solid every down dude? How much pass rush pop does he give you? Von Miller in that conversation, does he build upon what we saw at the end of the year? Because he started to make some plays towards the end of the year. Does he continue that? Are these workout videos that we're seeing super legit and he's ready to hit the ground running? I don't think he's going to be the guy he was before he got hurt. But if he can just be a number 2, that's awesome. Like if he can give you close to double-digit sacks and just be some sort of an impact player, that's fine. And then those are really like your top three dudes. And then we'll see Casey Toohill, Smoot, Javon Solomon, Kingsley Jonathan, who kind of factors in there. But I worry about the top end of that group. I think the depth is fine. I think you have a whole bunch of B- and B players, but I don't know how many B pluses or A's that you have. And that worries me a little bit. So my eyes are definitely on that group. It's weird because I think that group has a ton of depth, like I said, but not a ton of top end known quantity ability. And that worries me a little bit. Linebacker, if everybody stays healthy, the Bills have one of the best linebacker pairings in the league with Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano. If Bernard takes another jump, look out for the entire rest of the league. And I'm also very excited to see what a full year of him and Matt Milano really looks like. I think they can both unlock each other a little bit. They're both kind of force multipliers. And then the depth there is really the competition part, like you said. Like, is it Morrow and Deion Jones and Spector and Dorian Williams? And how does everybody look in the preseason? How do they look in camp? Linebacker is a spot that does get banged up. I mean, like you said, we've already seen it in minicamp. So I am interested to see how the backups play, because I do think at some point Bernard or Milano might miss a game or miss a half or miss more than that, and you need somebody to fill that spot. And then in the secondary corner, I'm really confident in Douglas and Benford. I love that as the CB1 and CB2. I'm worried after that. I want Kyrie to be the guy. I still think he's a bit inconsistent. I like Jamarcus Ingram. I like him more in the slot, but now he's like CB4 on the outside, which worries me a little bit. We'll see how he does. But safety, to your point, is really the next one up, like in terms of what I'm intrigued with, just to see who wins that safety battle. Does Cole Bishop beat out one of the vets? Do obviously both vets win out and Bishop is the backup? How do they use Cole Bishop? Like, I like him less the farther he gets away from the line of scrimmage. So, like, is he the backup to Taron Johnson? Do they use him around the box, or do they envision him as just a true off-ball safety? That competition is really interesting, and especially, too, because of if it is Rapp and Edwards, I think they're both fine starters. I think they give you a fine floor, a high enough floor. But similar to the edge conversation, neither one of them give you this top-end, top-tier level of production. And the Bills have had top-tier production at safety since Sean McDermott took over with Poyer and Hyde. Like, I'm worried about how how Rapp and Edwards play off of one another, because they're more similar than they are different, and I think that limits the defense a little bit. I like what Bishop adds from an athleticism standpoint, but I don't love him overall. It's a very interesting grouping, and again, the Bills have had some of the best safety play in the NFL for the last 7 years. So I think that's a really important one, especially as this secondary changes, new defensive coordinator, new coaches, all of that kind of coming in. That's a really interesting battle to watch as well.
Yeah, man. Is it? Do you think it's fair to say that the Bills look at this defense and think, look, if we can have this solid B minus production from the defensive line, and then the same thing with the safeties, if we have the A plus production from our second level of the defense with Bernard, Milano, Taron Johnson is kind of attached to them, right?
100%.
Because he's like a weak side linebacker for the Bills. And even the Rasul Douglas and Benford, who people, I feel like they don't talk enough about how good Benford has been, how good Rasul has been since he arrived with the Bills. So maybe we have A plus, A minus production from this second level. We can live with just a solid floor at safety and the defensive line.
I think that's actually really interesting way to put it. And I think you can, as long as those A-level guys play at that level. And the Bills are lucky enough, Matt Milano was an all-pro in 2022. Taron Johnson was an all-pro last year. I don't think it's crazy to think that Terrell Bernard could be an all-pro, maybe even this year, but next year, I think we'd be definitely in that conversation. And then, Benford and Douglas are a very solid 1-2. Rasul Douglas came in mid-year last year and functioned as CB1 for the entirety of the year. And he was another dude. He played in that game against Kansas City in the division round, but he was banged up. He was playing on one leg. You could see him trying to run full speed and catch dudes. He couldn't. He looked like a wounded horse out there, just could not get going. Benford was hurt. He didn't play at all. They're both a very solid tandem. And I think Christian Benford already is a CB2 right now. I think by the end of the year, He could be a high-end CB2 or maybe even a low-end CB1. And if you get that out of him and Douglas, and then Taron Johnson's an all-pro, Bernard is ascending, Matt Milano can be an all-pro. Ed Oliver, I know, disappears at times, but he had a ridiculously good year last year. We know how good Daquan Jones is. And I think the rotation behind them is okay, right? Like Dwayne Carter, Austin Johnson, Sean Williams, whoever wins from that, although I do expect it to be Austin Johnson. I think they're good enough at defensive tackle, linebacker, nickel, and outside corner. They're so good at those spots that, exactly to your point, I think you can afford to be a B- or a B at defensive end and at safety. And then it's on Babich and McDermott to kind of scheme things up to help some guys win, because similar to the wide receiver conversation, you don't really have anybody really Ed Oliver's the closest, if he's not already there, in terms of dudes who can just go win one-on-one. Somebody who can just go be a game wrecker and go get you a bucket. Von Miller was that before he got hurt. Now you need someone to be that on the outside and help Ed Oliver and help the defense in general. But they have enough quality in the rest of the supporting cast, especially on that second level, that you can get creative schematically and make it work.
Awesome. Man, thank you so much for taking your time joining me again. Hopefully at some point I get as rich or richer than Eric, and I can buy you from Cover One, just like some some soccer teams do with superstar players.
I'll say transfer me over or activate my buyout clause and just go.
Pay your lease clause, and then you move to Brazil and we do the show together.
I like that. That's fine.
Shout out to Eric, right? It's always awesome to watch you together as well. And man, I don't want to talk about Copa America because your Messi team probably is gonna beat my Brazil.
I don't know though. Messi's hurt.
If Brazil
now.
Can get there, right?
Brazil. So one, Messi's kind of hurt. He might not play the next game. Might not even play the quarterfinals. We'll see what happens. I just expect Brazil to turn it around. Like, they're Brazil. Like, there's no... Plus, they should have won that first game. I know they didn't play good, and it didn't look great, especially to Brazil standards, like we talked about.
Yeah.
But the refereeing was so poor. At the very least, it should have been a penalty and a shot on Vinny in the box there. I don't want to say probably, but you would think that goes in. It should have been at least 1-0 Brazil. I just think they still have too much talent to be denied. I don't think they're playing like the Brazil we're used to seeing, especially like the greats that have played nationally. But I just, like, there's no way to me Brazil doesn't pull through. Like, I think tonight, or when they play tonight, right?
Yeah,
when tonight. Yeah.
Paraguay.
If they come through and just beat Paraguay like 3-0, 4-0, I'd be like, okay, there you go. And even if they just start small, even if they only win 1-0, get on the board, survive, advance, go forward. But like we talked earlier, they are playing just so individualistically.
Yeah.
But all those individuals are so talented that it might just be enough. Like, you just need Vinny or Rodrigo or Rafinha or anybody to just uncork something brilliant and bury one, and then all of a sudden everything changes. Or if hopefully they can just come together schematically and make it work. They're just too good, and they're Brazil. And maybe I'm just still thinking of the Brazil from when I was a kid, but man, like, I just expect them to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate your respect for Brazil and admiration, but man, I think 1-0 is more likely at this point, you know. And one question I have for you, I don't know if you have an answer for that because it's kind of weird, but man, I've gathering some information because I will be writing an article about the NFL game here in Brazil this year, right, between the Eagles and the Packers. And I saw that in the stadium, the game will be here in the Corinthians Stadium. They're asking them to increase the size of the field a bit because the end zones they are like kind of longer. The field is longer than a normal soccer field, so they need more space for the end zones. And at the same time, in Copa America, they made the fields smaller, man. The pitches are smaller, like 5 meters smaller, I think.
And they're putting like real grass over like artificial grass in a whole bunch of the stadiums. Like here in the States, they did it at I think they did it in the Cowboy Stadium. They did it in the Falcon Stadium. Like, there's a whole bunch of weird reconfiguring going on.
Yeah, and man, when you watch the games, it looks the field is so small, you know. It's like a mix of soccer and indoor soccer, you know, and I'm like, my goodness, but if they need to increase the size here because they need space for the sidelines, for NFL sidelines here in Brazil. And why they made the NFL stadiums supposedly should have enough space to make the field the right size, you know? So I don't get it. What's going on there?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's like a basic thing. Like, if we're thinking about, okay, where can we play soccer? Or where can we play like football? The first thing you have to think of, like, oh, yeah, we want to play in this stadium. Like, okay, does it fit the field that we
Yeah,
need to have? And yeah,
kind
I
of
don't.
basic stuff, right?
That's super basic. But you know what's funny? It's so basic that I think that it like gets forgotten. I feel like they're like, okay, if we have this game in Brazil, do we think there's a fan base there? Do we think it'll track? Okay, what team should we put there? I think they're thinking of all these high level things, and nobody was like, is the field going to be big enough? Like, can we fit it there? Can we make it happen? Oh, nice. Eric's
Yeah.
going to be there. That's cool.
Eric will be there. Yeah, I hope I'll be there as well, Eric. For now, not inside the stadium, unfortunately. Man, the tickets sold out in less than 2 hours,
Wow, really?
and yeah, people are really excited about this game. But I will be there. I will be there to meet some Bills Mafia there, and maybe to watch the Bills game together in a bar, or we'll find a
Nice.
place, right? And it's gonna be exciting for sure. And
Awesome.
thank you so much, brother. Really appreciate you taking your time joining me. I count on. I already make this. I will invite you right now in front of everybody. I'm counting on you to be my eyes again in the scrimmage this year again, just like last season, right? So counting on you to show up here and to be able to talk some Bills about the scrimmage when it's closer to happen. So
Nice.
the invitation is already done here. All
You
right.
got it. I accept right now. And I would say anytime you want me, you got me. And especially for that, I will be going to the scrimmage. I'm going to be going to a bunch of the practices as well. I'll be tweeting out a bunch of stuff. And then, yeah, that, I think the scrimmage is Friday, August 2nd.
I don't know. Right
I
now,
think
I
that's
have no
when it
idea.
happens. I think that's when it is. If my brain serves me correctly, but yeah, we'll get together again. Anytime you want me, you got me. And, man, next time we chat, who knows? We'll see what happens in the Euros. We'll see what happens with the Bills. We'll see what happens in Copa America. Man, it's
Yeah,
a lot to happen.
Eric better make that release clause higher, because I'm saving some money there.
I like that.
Thank you so much, brother.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Bills Mafia. I'll be back on Sunday with the Leading the Charge in Portuguese, probably with a friend, but not so much, a Dolphin friend, talking about the Dolphins and looking forward to our opponents in the AFC East. So don't miss it. Hit that like button, subscribe to my Fernando Schmude channel. I'm always counting on you. Thank you so much, Bills Mafia. Go Bills.